Welcome everyone. Good to meet you. This will be for quite a long while now, the last session here in Phuket. So the topic that I've decided to talk a little bit about today is kind of like a concluding topic that follows all the various stages that we have discussed so far. All the stages of the practice. So you have the first stage of actually preparing your practice, the 3 preparations, setting up your posture properly, breathing properly, setting up your attitude properly that you bring to the practice, and going into the first stage, relaxing the body. Second stage, becoming present. Third stage, becoming silent in the mind. Fourth stage, stillness. And then making that the heart of your practice and slowly integrating your abilities to observe yourself, to see what you're actually doing to yourself. As I said before, suffering is not something that is happening to you. It's much more something that you're doing. Okay. So we all are confronted with various situations in our life. We have to endure illness, old age, death, loss, etc. All of us are quite the same there. We have to endure people blaming us, criticizing us. We have to hear things that we might not like. And we have to respond to those things that we don't like with anger or dislike or just feeling grumpy and uncomfortable. Whether we want this or not, it just happens, yes? But most of the suffering that we experience as a human being is quite unnecessary. Yes, sure, there are problems in life, and we all have to experience them. It doesn't matter whether you're enlightened or not. You still have to go through difficulties. It's not that when you reach enlightenment, all of a sudden there's no more difficulties. Nobody will blame you. Everybody will always agree with you. You only hear nice things, etc. That's not going to be the case. Because it's just simply not the nature of this world. In this world, things are changing continuously. Our feelings, emotions are changing. They're subject to outside influences. Our thoughts are changing. They're subject to conditions. Our whole being is continuously changing. So within all of that change, it is possible to find some sort of stability, a centeredness, something that endures, that doesn't go up and down with the waves and currents of life. And it is worth making effort to find that. It is not only good for yourself, but it is good for all those who are in touch with you. Your practice, your inner practice, when you practice meditation, when you cultivate your mind and your personality, that is not only just good for yourself. We're not separated, cut off individual things that have nothing to do with others. Every living thing in this world is connected. Whatever you do has an impact. Whatever you do causes things to happen in this world. Whether it's a thought, or an emotion, or a physical action, or a word that you speak, everything is a cause which produces results. And it's not just one cause leading to one result. Think of an apple tree. How many seeds do you have in an apple? Not just one, right? How many apples do you have on the tree? Not just one, right? How many times does an apple tree produce apples? Not just once, right? And out of how many seeds does one apple tree grow? It grows out of one. So you have one seed containing the potential of millions of apple trees and trillions of seeds. You see, this is endless. It's infinite. Our actions are the same. The way you act in your mind is a seed. Every little intention is a seed. Every little movement in your mind is a seed. And every one of those movements comes from previous causes and results. Understanding this network is impossible on our level. We don't even need to think about it. It's impossible to grasp how complex every cell in your body is, and on how many causes and results it depends, and how many things it influences on a daily basis, every second. The complexity of this universe is staggering. It's truly something profound. Contemplate this picture well, and you get an idea of how deep and profound karma is. Karma here means action. The word karma means action. If you translate it, it's action. It's not some sort of mystical force that punishes and rewards you. Karma is not like some sort of parent figure that's after you when you did something wrong. So karma will get you. It's not like that. Or in a very, very kind of superficial way. Yes, apples produce only apple trees. They will never produce Ferraris or fridges or cherries. But they might be an indirect cause for cherry trees to grow. They might be an indirect cause for a Ferrari to hit, etc. So everything is not only just separated. So you are not just separated. So your actions matter. Some people say, wow, the universe is so big and so vast, and so the time spans, they're so incredibly profound and long, and it means that my actions don't matter. It doesn't matter what I do, it doesn't matter what I think, it doesn't matter who I am. Welcome to nihilism. That's a big problem. Because your actions do matter. You're not just disconnected and alone. Everything you are, everything you embody has an impact in this world. So today's topic, therefore, is the way up. Knowing that all our actions have an impact, we can kind of bring that into a formula. We can say, what I'm doing is who I am becoming. So we talk of the present moment, right? What you are doing right now is who you are becoming. Let's see the various levels of doing that are possible. You could do in your mind. You could form an intention. You could think things through. You could wonder. You could complain. You could judge. You could compare. All these are doings of the mind. And all those doings produce results that are in alignment and in accordance with the cause. So let's say your doing is complaining. In simple terms, it means while you're complaining, you're producing more complaining. So you're kind of like a farmer that walks over a field, sowing the seeds of complaining. What kind of things will come out of that? Well, more complaining. In other words, you're getting better at complaining. Correct or not? Every single time you complain, you're practicing to complain. So would you think that it is a worthwhile question to ask yourself, what am I doing right now in my mind? It's a good question to ask because it shows you who you're becoming. Then you could ask yourself further, is this who I want to become? Do I want to become a master of complaining? Then I should just keep going. But what is it that comes with complaining? It's misery. You feel miserable while you're complaining, right? Every single time when you complain, you feel horrible. You're not feeling good already, otherwise you wouldn't complain. So complaining causes more reasons, not only just more complaining, but it also, and that's very tricky, every time you complain, you create more reasons for complaining also. So kind of your brain gets wired in a very weird and fancy way. It gets wired so that you start to filter out things that are good, and you start to see more and more things that are worthy of complaining about. You see how that works? It's like Netflix. I call it Headflix. In Netflix, you have these two thumbs, right? Thumbs up, thumbs down. Every time you vote for a movie that it's good, you give it a thumbs up. You say, that's a nice movie. So what does Netflix, what the Netflix engine does here is it recognizes your thumbs up, and it serves you movies that are alike. Your brain does exactly the same. Every time you subscribe to a certain thinking pattern, every time you subscribe to an opinion or a certain conclusion or something, you get more which is alike. You get more of the same. So that you get more opportunity to practice what you're practicing, like complaining. So on day one, you complain about something. Your brain recognizes that. It says, all right, okay, Tobi seems to like complaining. So let's see if there's more things to complain about. So your brain starts to filter out things, and it starts to look at life in a different way. And voila, it starts to find things that you could complain about. And you see them. Oh, look at that guy over there. What, again? I've had that for a good while with noise, yes? I'm always mentioning that because it's one of my biggest points, okay? Just please bear with me. So the noise thing was something that I would complain about. And then I would complain about not only just alone, but on the level of mind, but I would verbalize my complaints and share them with my wife, infecting her, making her also miserable. Then she got into the habit of complaining about it. So when I wouldn't complain, she would do it. See how complex it is, and how we set ourselves up in our daily life to experience what we want to experience. Maybe not say what we want to experience, but what we are familiar with experiencing. Your brain is a fantastic tool. It's an amazing tool. It filters out what isn't relevant for it. So if complaining is relevant for you, if it somehow notices that, it will give you more things to complain about. Like, in other words, there's so much information that comes in right now through all of your senses. If your brain would pick out every single information, you would go crazy. You have to filter things out. Fortunately, your brain does that. Otherwise, it would just be total overkill. You'd end up in a mental institution. If every single bit of information would become conscious, too much. So good, your brain does that. But we can ask ourselves, here is a space or room for improvement. We can ask ourselves, now, what am I paying attention to right now? And how do I think right now? What's my direction in life? Am I on the way up, or am I on the way down? How do you know? Well, if you feel miserable, you're quite obviously on the way down, and you're not just on the way down, you produce more way down. It's quite tricky. You create a momentum. Just one complaint, it's not just one complaint. It has momentum to it. And if you're an expert at complaining, then you create a massive amount of momentum. Every single complaint, it shoots you forward 10 kilometers right away. You just slide down the path because you're really good at it, right? So it's important to kind of create a stop or a halt in there. And that's exactly what mindfulness does. You start to wake up to what you are doing to yourself. Because really, every single time when you complain, you hurt nobody but yourself. Now I have to think back, because what I just said, actually that's not true. I have to correct myself. You're not just hurting yourself. Every time you hurt yourself, you increase the overall percentage of problem in this world. You make the world a worse place. Does that make sense? It feels like nothing. It's just a complaint. But really, you are the one that contributes to this place being a bit worse in that moment. And swallowing that truth pill is a bit hard. It goes down difficult. Because we have to be super honest with ourselves. Like, in what ways am I deceiving myself? In what ways am I harming myself? And do I really have to do that? So every time mindfulness kicks in, you're presented with a choice. Way up or way down. And it starts in your mind. It starts with the way you orient your mind. And in order to orient our mind, we need to know what's good for us. So there are a few guidelines. For example, kindness. Every time you're kind to yourself, and every time you're kind to someone else, your whole being knows that what you just did is good. There is not one doubt. You know it from the heart. It's absolutely unshakable. So we kind of have like a moral compass in our heart already. Every time you're compassionate with someone, every time you're genuine, sincere, every time you're truthful and honest, you know it's good. So here are just a few things. Every time you're patient, you know you're doing something good here. Every time you hold back on your criticism and find a few words of praise, you know you're doing well right now. And every time you do well, you lift yourself up. You build self-respect. Because most of the time it requires sacrifice to do something that is difficult to do, but good. So choosing the way up is very often difficult because it goes against the grain of our habits. It goes against the way we are often wired. We are wired to go for comfort. We're not wired to go for what's good. We are wired to go for what's familiar, not what's necessarily good for us. So you have to understand very clearly, okay, for example, if I keep doing this or that every day, I'm going to feel miserable about myself, and the misery is just only going to increase day after day. Maybe I need to change my ways. How could I change them? Now you really start moving up. For me, the entire path, in my opinion, is a way up. And it is what matters. We don't need to think about the goals. Anyways, whenever you think about the goals, you're wrong. You're already wrong. The goals cannot be captured by thought. Thought is way too weak to capture the goals of this path. Your imagination is way too limited to get an idea of how it will be. Think of infinite possibilities. So keep an open mind. Keep a mind that wants to learn and grow, not a mind that says, oh, I'd rather know this one right now, because every time you know something, that's where you're stuck. Every time you think you know, you're stuck right there. Every time you think you've understood, that's where you're stuck. That's your new stuck. That's your new plateau. And how long you're dwelling on this depends on how sharp your insight is and how honest you're with yourself. And so this is how we work on this path. It is starting with action. I think it is through and through. This entire path is about action. It's about what you do right now. How you direct your attention. How you direct your awareness. How you shape yourself. What kind of vessel are you? What do you contain? This is what you share with the world. So are you a very small and limited vessel? Could you contain more water? Could you contain more blessings? Could you contain more benefits? How so? How can you expand yourself as a vessel? Only through humility. That says, I don't know, and I might be wrong. That is humility. Accepting the fact that you might not know. That's a very difficult place to go to. It's a very difficult place to go to, honestly. Because we want to feel like we know what we're doing, and we want to feel like we know who we are, and we want to feel like we know who others are, and what world we are living in, and how things are balanced and structured. All this is like it's who we are. Questioning that is difficult. Is who I am right now serving me? Is it serving others? Is there anything in life that is higher than being of service to myself and others? That's more worthwhile. What if I decided on that? What if I decided that may all my actions and my thoughts, may all my emotions, may all my words be there for the benefit of all? What would happen to you as a being? You've become incredibly powerful because your existence is not just limited to a tiny little me. Now you will receive energy which is beneficial for all. And these are vast amounts, these are infinite amounts. If you just concentrate on receiving energy for yourself and trying to get it all out, like sucking out the marrow of life, then it's only you that gets that. How big is that in the universe? That tiny little me. It's nothing. But imagine the vast amounts of energies that you will start receiving when you make your mind up to work not only for yourself, and then genuinely and sincerely bring in kindness and compassion to actually not just lift yourself up, but all. That's when you really start building power. This is leading you up. Your existence is not just some random kind of thing, and your actions are not just some random type of process. You can make it so much more. If you just intend it, then it all starts with that intention. May I grow? So how do you start with your thoughts? Then that will translate into your emotions, how you think. It will shape how you feel. And how you feel will shape how you talk. And how you talk will shape how you act. Then how you act will shape who you're becoming as a habitual kind of character. It will create a persona, a character, a you, a new you, maybe a better you, hopefully a better you. There's a lot of talk about changing the world, saving the world, making it a better place, and so forth, right? And I absolutely agree, and I think it could be made our duty, and we can take that responsibility and can say, yes, may that world become a better place, but it solely depends on you, only you. You can't just sit around and wait for the world to become better. It doesn't work that way. Governments, politicians, other people, organizations, GMOs, etc., they're working hard to make this world a better place. But how do we work on it mostly? We still neglect ourselves. We still think, okay, it's the input that I put into this world. It's me shifting things around. It's me bringing A to B and B to C. Not so much. It's much more about who you are as a being. That determines what you do and what your output is. So first, think of who you are. And you recognize who you are by what you're doing to yourself right now. How you navigate this ship. and what kind of ship you have, what kind of size of vessel you have. And finally, if you keep aiming upwards and you keep your mind open and want to learn, you're not hardening in your views. You're always open to learn and receive more information, new information, relevant information. But at the moment when you think you know, that's where your path stops. There's no more learning, no more growth in that moment, unless you then open up again and you're emptying your cup and you're ready to receive more again. So I think this is a fundamental attitude in our meditation practice. We look for, where do I suffer right now? Is there any form of stress that is avoidable right now in my being? Can I let that go? Could I let that go? How can I let it go? Now your path starts, and it's not so much about some sort of fancy technique that you're practicing and you go from step 1 to step 2 to step 3, spending 15 minutes with each step. But it's much more about your hunger to find out how you're doing it, how you're maneuvering your mind in this body, how you're treating yourself, how you're treating the various pains that are coming up in the meditation. How do you go into relationship with them? How do you communicate with your body, with your mind, with your emotions? If you're not really hungry to find out how you work, then you're not meditating. You're just following some technique, hoping that you get some fantastic results. It'll get you nowhere. At best, it makes you a bit more relaxed, which is already nice. But there's more. Some people say, "Oh, I'm happy already. I don't need to meditate." Here would be a classic example. Well, don't you wonder if you could deepen your happiness? Don't you wonder just how much deeper it could become? Don't you wonder just how much it could spread? You see, it's this kind of idea like, "Oh, I'm happy already. I don't need to do anything." That's where we are limited, right there. That's a conclusion. I'm happy already, I don't need to do anything. How do you get that idea? Do you think you've reached the upper possible limit of happiness? Do you even consider that there might be more? How much more? How happy could you be? And what is happiness? Does that mean you're jumping around in a clown suit all day and sing happy songs? What is happiness? So the people who think, "Oh, I am already happy," well, define happiness. What is it exactly that you are already? And then quickly you find out, like, wow, we don't really know what happiness is, and we don't really know who we are. Great, now you're in the right territory. You start asking questions. You might also just pull back and say, no, thank you. I'll just stay with what I know. Fair enough. That's where you're stuck then. If you want to grow as a person, as a being, for the benefit of all, you have to get out of what you know. And that's not only scary very often, there's also a great pull back to the known. Remember, the brain will keep serving you things it knows best. It'll keep giving you those thumbs up things that it's used to. Yeah. So stay empty in your mind. Much more possibility. Much more learning is there. So that's all that comes to mind tonight. Are there any questions?